What is Dollar Gujarati?
How do Gujaratis do business?
What kind of businesses can you do in America?
How can you grow your business?
How do you get your first customer?
How can you raise funding?
When should you be frugal?
Can you start a business as an immigrant?
Why is sales important?
Where are all the investors?
Which is the correct model for your startup?
Find these answers and more in Season 2 of Dollar Gujarati.
Season 1 was all about the stories of successful Gujarati entrepreneurs in America. Season 2 is about getting actionable tips from young Gujarati startup founders. Every week, we dive deep into solving one business challenge in a TED Talk style. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Dollar Gujarati and Learning with Y Combinator. Today we have on our show Jay Patel, who is a second generation Indian American and also a Gujarati. So Jay has started a company called FlexEngage, which went through Y Combinator a few years ago, and he's the founder and CEO of the company. And today he's going to teach us something where his Gujarati roots have helped him in running his startup. So, hi Jay, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, FlexEngage, and what are you going to teach us?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Dollar Gujarati. I love what you're trying to do here, and I hope it's a huge success. Over the years, I personally learned how beneficial it is to learn from others' successes and failures, and so I'm hoping some of the learnings I've had prove helpful to you all, the audience. And the topic I'm going to be covering today is called The Art of Being Frugal. And the goal is to basically help companies avert a premature demise, if you will, by applying the Gujarati way of running a business. Before I jump in, I just want to give a quick background on myself. So I went to college or university at the University of Pennsylvania, and I did a specialized major there. And coming out of college, I decided to focus on technology and spent the majority of my career actually doing technology consulting at Accenture. And soon after that is when I started my company, which as mentioned is called FlexEngage. FlexEngage, we help retailers better retain their customers by personalizing their post-purchase communications. So our hero product is actually smart e-receipts or digital receipts. And we're fortunate to be able to powering this for some great brands like Under Armour, Michael Kors, GNC. And as was mentioned, we are lucky to be a Y Combinator company because they've been really invaluable in guiding us in the right direction as we've been growing as a company and as a startup. And one of the things that Y Combinator has been preaching to us from day one is to keep burn or expenses as low as possible to maximize our company's runway. In other words, don't run out of money. So fortunately, being Guju or Gujarati, when it comes to managing our finances, being frugal comes quite naturally, to be honest. And it's actually a good thing when you're starting and running your own business, especially a venture-backed business. And the reason that is a lot of investors out there will actually urge you to spend your money very aggressively. And that's because they want to see you grow as quickly as possible, even at the risk of failing. So our investors actually did really get on us for being cheap early on. But as was mentioned, being frugal has actually helped us over the last few years avert some downturns and survive through those. So those some investors now actually really talk up or are very thankful for our frugalness. Based on my experiences with FlexEngage, I wanted to share with you some real life ways in which we have been able to be frugal and managing our expenses so that hopefully you all can apply some of this to your businesses and companies as well. So first thing is people. This is probably the biggest cost for most companies, especially startups out there. And my first piece of learning or advice here is, first and foremost, don't overhire, especially if you haven't found true product market fit. If you're not familiar with product market fit, you'll know when you've hit this point because no matter what you do, you cannot keep up with the demand customers are asking for your product or your service. So until you get to that point, only hire people you absolutely need to have, the must-haves. Second thing is to hire the right people. Those who are looking to be paid fair and are not simply looking to maximize their compensation, their money that they get. these are the people that will care more about the vision, the work, even the culture of what you're creating. Again, more than just the dollars and cents at the end of the day. Of course, this is going to be really hard to find. But when you do, trust me, it pays off big time in the long run, and you avert a lot of pain as well. The third thing around people or employees I can tell you is to treat your employees like family, right? Especially as Gujaratis, we grow up, when someone comes into our house, mehman aave tyare, you treat them like family, right? Whether they're family or not. And your employees are similar. By fostering like a real relationship with them outside of just work, you'll be able to create a culture that will attract good talent that values hard work and solidarity, again, over money. This, along with equity, is going to become your secret weapon, so to speak, in trying to hire and bring on the best talent that you can to your company.
So, Jay, who would be you said you should hire the people you absolutely need. So for your company, what talent was that? Was it software engineers? Was it?
Yeah, it really depends on your business, but for most startups, right, it's usually developers. Engineering is the first place you start, because you have to build your product, right? So for us, that was where we started, engineering. And for our company, actually, I didn't mention, but I actually started it part-time. So I still was working it full-time at Accenture when we started FlexEngage. And so I was actually working with a team of developers out in India, sort of at night, on the weekends. It's my second job, and that's where we invested our early dollars. And so even with that, part of the reason was doing that because that way I can work when they were awake, which was my nighttime, but also save a lot of money that way, right? Obviously, it's a lot cheaper to hire talent in India versus here in the US. And then the other thing I can offer there, Janie, is just many startups do this, but we were just wearing a lot of hats early on. We were the ones doing the sales. I mean, my background is technology, but I've done some sales, and so I was helping out with sales, marketing. I mean, whatever it is, you just roll up your sleeves, legal, and you just learn how to do it, and you use your network. So there's a lot of different ways there that you can save money.
So I guess I'll ask you, what is the second most important person to hire? I know engineers, but what is the second most important? Because you have limited time, right?
Yeah.
To wear all the hats. So what is the second most important person you would?
Yeah, I would say, again, it depends by business, but generally speaking, you need sales. At the end of the day, you're trying to make money, right, for your business. And so you want to bring in someone or folks that actually know how to do sales. Selling is actually an art, or it's a skill. And especially if you have very technical people, that doesn't come naturally to them, right? So you want to make sure you have people that can, once you've built your product, actually help sell your product as well. So I would say, generally speaking, that's the talent you'll want to bring. For me, fortunately, my co-founder comes from a sales background. So between him and myself, we sort of had that core base in those two areas established. And to this day, that's sort of how we divide out responsibility and oversight as well. The next big area, I guess, that I'd like to talk about is third-party services. So as your company starts growing, you're going to be spending a lot of money on third-party services. And for example, a lot of startups spend a lot of money on cloud, right? Cloud providers such as Amazon, AWS. This can be your biggest expense. However, many of you may not know, but Amazon, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google, they all give a lot of credits out. For Amazon AWS, we were able to get $100,000 in credits. For Microsoft at the time when we were going through Y Combinator, they were giving out $500,000 in credits. So over 2-year terms. So this is a big benefit you have to take advantage of, because in your early days when you don't have much money, this is a lot of money, right? And it still is, to be honest. So you can typically find this benefit through some sort of startup accelerator, incubator like Y Combinator. That might be out there, investor as well, as if you have any investor connections and things like that. But ask around, and I'm sure you'll find a way to that. Their goal at the end of the day is to hopefully you grow big and they retain you as a customer. So it's sort of a win-win proposition. And at least within Y Combinator, they actually have, for the alumni, a directory of hundreds of services now with special discounts or credits that even to this day we take advantage of. So find a way to get that free money. Again, this should be natural to most of us Gujus, but make sure we're keeping that in the back of our mind as well. And so when COVID hit us, the beginning of this year, and as you know, we're in retail, and as I mentioned, our customers are GNC, Under Armour, etc. We were impacted because they were impacted. They were shut down. And so we had to really look at further reducing our costs. And we really went in there and cut the fat, if you will, from all the services that we're using. And probably the simplest question I asked all of our department heads was, how often do you use each of these products? And we had a spreadsheet and it was open to everybody. So everybody could see all the different services the different groups were using. And just by asking that question, before we knew it, people were volunteering to cut out services that they were barely utilizing, right?
So after that exercise, what were some of the services that came out that they are must-haves? And if you can just tell us a few of those services that.
Of course, yeah. So I'll go sort of by team. So for like sales, for example, they need a CRM tool, whether it's Salesforce or some other tool. They need that to be able to manage and track their activity and their clients and their accounts, right? So that's natural. That's a must-have. For us, especially now as you become a remote team, a tool that allows cross-team communications like Slack. We use Slack at our organization, and so we've decided that's an investment we want to keep. We are in the Google ecosystem, and so just again, based on the size of our company, we're now in a paid tier. And again, that's an expense. We decided that, you know, whether it's we're paying Google or Microsoft, that's just a part we have to run our business. So I guess those are some examples. Those are like core services that you'll need. Actually, when we ran the exercise, I think we actually ended up cutting our total expense costs. And by the way, even Amazon, even though we were spending with them, we went back to them and negotiated more credits, even after on top of the 100,000 we've gotten. And even post that, we worked with different vendors to get tens of thousands more. And so you can still always go back, especially when you are in a crunch like this, and ask for more. But when we cut all of the expenses across all of our services, we ended up saving, I would say, close to a third to 50% in total is how much we cut our expenses by. So it's pretty substantial, especially for a company ours now that spends a good amount of money, 100,000 plus per month on services. So the next big area or areas that I like to talk about that might be helpful to you is office. So just like people, office is another big expense that most businesses have. Might be a little bit different right now with COVID, but just like hiring, the advice here is don't overextend yourself. When you sign an office lease, it's often a 2 to 3 year commitment. So this is an especially long time for young companies and startups in particular, because you don't even know where you'll be in a year, let alone 3 to 5 years from now, right? Our first office, we were spending less than $2,000 a month, and we started with 7 people in that office. And we kept that office until we were over 20 people literally crammed in there, in that office space. I think I had enough, I was shoulder to shoulder with my co-founder. That's how tight it was. So, that's kind of the extreme that we went to kind of maintain our office space. Now, the flip side of that, the mistake we then made is, once we got to the point where we were shoulder to shoulder and we were still growing, we decided to finally upgrade to a new office. And just keep in mind, our original office, we didn't have proper AC, heating, plumbing, any of that. And so our employees were very excited. So we did end up spending a good amount, getting on a nice all glass high-rise building, high up floor. Really went, I wouldn't say all out, but compared to where we were coming from, it felt like we were in a ritzy new hotel. And then 3 months later, COVID hit. So the office is there, we're all home remote, and we're spending a lot more money, but not actually utilizing the office space, right? Obviously, this is not something we could have predicted from our side. But the point being is, as long as you can minimize this cost, just like the others, the better it is for you, more so your company as well. And again, it sort of circles back. If you hire the right people, they'll understand and they'll support you in some of the decisions you make here, because this impacts them as well. So this just circles back to also hiring the right people, and not, the people who are looking for the big dollars and the fancy offices and things like that. So travel is another area, again, as you're company matures and you have a bigger sales team, say, again, it might initially just be the founders, and then, you know, as you expand to the sales team, maybe even a customer success team, if you're a tech startup, you will be spending a decent amount on flight and hotels, and that can add up pretty quickly. So, you know, as founders of the business or the owners, you know, and even the early employees, you can make a good effort to minimize your costs in this space, right? And making sure you're not staying at the nicest places, but, you know, after you pass a certain threshold, that becomes hard to do, and it's hard to instill that same discipline into new employees, especially ones that aren't used to that sort of culture. But with that, luckily, there are services out there like Trip Actions that basically will incentivize employees to book cheaper flights or hotels and things like that by actually giving them a share of the savings as well, right? So you can manually do this. We did this a little bit in the early days where we manually had this idea, but now there's actual services that will, for pretty cheap cost, will manage all of this for you as well. So that would be my advice on that front. And then on the last point around here, you know, we touched on this briefly just a second ago, but being frugal doesn't necessarily always mean not spending money. It just means spending it wisely. And so I learned early on in my career that the cheapest and easiest way to make people happy is to feed them, right? Free food. And so my consulting days, for example, I literally would have team members that from the beginning of the week would look forward to the free breakfast, the free lunch day, and just eagerly await it, right? And the thing with that is they would just instantly be happy, no matter how many hours they were working. And the points we were working lots of hours and weekends, and they would just be happy because they got free food. So my final recommendation on the topic of being frugal is actually something that will require you to spend money. At FlexEngage, we actually let our employees on a list say what snacks they want, what drinks they want, what food they want, and then we provide that. And we also provide a monthly team meeting where we provide food and activities for them as well. Again, in my experience, free food has the highest ROI of any other morale building tactic that I've ever seen, heard of, or read about. So for me, it pays itself many times over. So okay. I think that's it from my side. You know, I hope these tidbits are helpful to the folks that are out there. You know, if you do have questions and want to talk more, feel free to contact me. My email is there. I do want to thank Dollar Gujarati for this new outlet, for connecting us and helping us interact and network with each other. As successful as we good Jews are individually and are by ourselves here, imagine how powerful and strong we can be by working together, right? So thank you again for the opportunity and the time.